Alrighty, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for dialing in this early in the morning. I am recording this presentation for people to join us later or see these instructions. I won't be talking very long. I just want you to become comfortable with getting this tool working. What we're looking at today is a product from an organization called OWASP. OWASP is a very good, in my opinion, organization. It's one of those open source projects that produces a lot of different things. It's kind of like the Apache project in that regard. But their focus is on web security. OWASP itself stands for Open Web Application Security Project. And they have a couple of tools out there to help you either design or implement more secure websites. That's its goal, that's its focus. They've got a lot of different software out there. There's different software at different stages of production. Some of it has become deprecated to the point where it's not really useful anymore, but they still have a large number of active projects. One of them is WebGoat. What WebGoat gives us is the ability to create, or not create, but take a look at a web application that has a number of vulnerabilities. If you recall when we were looking at DVWA, I hope I mentioned it at the time, but it was one of two projects that are very good at this kind of thing. Here's a vulnerable website. But OWASP is more difficult in its assessment than DVWA is, in my opinion. Not to take anything away from DVWA, it's a little bit more introductory, and as we will see going forward in this course, it does give us very clear solutions in PHP. OWASP is more Java focused and JSP, so its solutions and its problems are a different architecture. But the beauty of OWASP is that they've got this top 10 list, which is always, 1 second please, let me see if I can bring this up. This is the website, owasp.org. It's a brilliant site. It has lots of great resources. As security professionals, if you have anything to do with website and website security, and frankly, I'll be very surprised if you don't have something to do with the corporate website security in your careers going forward. You want to keep an eye on what's happening in OWASP. OWASP, every few years, releases their top 10 list of vulnerabilities and how you can understand what that looks like. Their last list clearly is from 2021. They're probably due for another one this next year's, like next year or the year after. They're probably going to do another top 10. But for right now, their top 10 is access control, cryptographic failures, injections, SQL, and cross-site scripting types. We'll be looking at those next. Insecure design. This is their top 10 list, and they not only list them, but they talk about them, and they go into great and extreme discussion as to how you can mitigate it. They have a list of problems, how to prevent it, example code, they give you references, they have some common warnings that you can take a look at. The resources are thorough, and they should be able to give you the access to the assets you might need. All to say, OWASP is a very, what I think is one of the best projects out there for what we want to do in our careers going forward. So at any time, if you want, take a look at this company. And I should stop calling it a company. It's really not a company. It is an organization that is a not-for-profit. And here's their top 10 list. I've added both of those into the chat for this meeting. Very good company, and they have yearly meetings where they get together to discuss these things. They always have them in really cool places like Portugal or Spain or something like that, so I can never get the college to send me to one of these things just because of the travel expenses alone. But if they ever have one of their meetings in Canada, I'm going to try and go to them because they're just that good of an organization. I wouldn't mind going to one of their conferences. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, is one of the OWASP projects. And specifically what we're going to be looking at is the project, as I mentioned earlier, called WebGoat. It's up to version 2023.4. They've taken the same versioning number system that we saw with Kali, where they do a new release each quarter. Their project is stored in GitHub. It does require Java to run. Now we're going to talk about getting Java to work, but there is also a Docker instance that you can use as well. Now I have a question for the class. Have you guys seen Docker? Have you used Docker in your classes with Jeff? That's a question for you.
No.
No?
Nope.
Okay. So,
No.
but, who said but? Okay. Regardless, if you are familiar with Docker, and if you're comfortable installing and using Docker, and if you're having problems getting Java working, there is a fallback where you can install and use Docker. And there's probably some value in you taking a look at Docker, because we're finding that a lot of stuff is becoming containerized. What Docker is it's kind of like virtualization is for VMs. Docker is the same thing, but for applications, not for entire operating systems and operating system stacks. We set up a VM to install Debian, and then on top of Debian we installed Apache, and then PHP, and then the Mariah database. So we built an application stack on Debian. What Docker does is it says, well, let's just take a look at the application that you want to run and just give you enough to run that single application rather than an entire operating system. So I'll show you that at the end of this presentation. It might make implementing this a little bit easier. But normally what we do is we download the software and then we use Java to get it up and running. If you need to, you can install the latest version of Java. I've given you a link to do that. Hopefully that works for you. Okay. Normally, you can actually set a server address with this string. It doesn't always work well for me, so I've got a new startup screen that we can look at as well. There's also another tool called WebGoat, and it runs on port 9090. Historically, we had to run it as a separate Java applet running in a separate window, but with the latest version of WebGoat, WebWolf is now included in the Java WAR file. It's actually a jar file or a WAR file. Actually, I'm going to say it's a jar file. Sorry. You can use a proxy, and I'm sure you guys are comfortable using proxies from your courses in networking, but I don't force anybody to set up a proxy. Either Zap can be used. It's great for manipulating data, not only the data going out, but the data coming back, and that's where Zap really is handy. You can also use Burp Suite if you wish instead of Zap as your web proxy, but I don't insist that you do that. Okay. What is the process? Well, normally we download WebGoat, we put it somewhere on our file system. I encourage you to consider putting it at the root of the hard drive. So creating a directory called WebGoat, which is what I've done here. Oh, I must have closed it. All right, I must have closed it. So what I did was I created a directory in my C drive called WebGoat, and then I downloaded the latest version. Now these are just two older versions. Don't worry about those. That's out of scope for this conversation. But I went to the link that I supplied in Learn. Let's get that up here. Okay. There is a link to the WebGoat and WebWolf Git repository. When you click on that, it takes you to the WebGoat releases site. There is a link to that now in the Teams chat that'll take you to that, but that's their Git repository, and you can see WebGoat 2023.4.jar, and that's what we're going to download and put in the appropriate directory. So you might as well work on that while I continue to talk. You can try different configurations of trying to get it to run. I have some suggestions here, but this is one of those times where it's really handy to take a look at what they're doing in the Java, in the WebGoat documentation. So once you've downloaded the latest release, you can then go to the WebGoat Git repository, where of course they have a very elaborate README telling you how to get it running. Their first suggestion is to use Docker. I will show you that. The one I would like you to take a look at is using the this standalone command here. And this is the one I suggest you use, and this is the one I'm going to use. And if you have problems with ports, you can just try different ports to try and get them to work. We'll take a look at that in just 1 second. But there's great information on the README for the GitHub repository for WebGoat. And that's where they're always going to have, I shouldn't say always, we don't speak in absolutes, but this is where you're going to find any updates to WebGoat. And this is what you want to see. Once you start it using Java, you will then see something like this output here. The important thing that you're always looking for is that we started WebGoat in X number of seconds. Okay, it wasn't the first time I ran it. This is the most recent version, but it should at some point tell you WebGoat has started. And it can sometimes take a little bit. One time it took like almost 13 seconds for me. This time it started it in less than a second. So it has to go through and create a bunch of support files for itself. The first time you run it, it may take more than 10 seconds, but after that, it does get up and running very quickly. Any questions? Once you have it up and running, you are then going to want to go to this address, localhost, whatever port. If you recall, we have instructions here to use a specific port. If you set it up to port 8080, then you should be okay to go to port 8080 on localhost. So if that doesn't work and you have to follow the instructions and use some different ports other than 8080, sorry, it's not that one, it's this one, port 8080 for WebGoat, and then port 9090 for WebWolf. If you have to change these because those ports are already taken, you reflect that in the link here. And it's not localhost port 8080. You will get an error if you run that. You have to go to port whatever you set /WebGoat, and then you will need to create an account to get it working. Okay? Same with WebWolf. You will open up a new tab and you'll start using WebWolf. All right? Once you have them set up, you can use Zap from this project as well. I don't make you use that though. And finally, once you have it up and running, there is a report card that shows you what you've done and what you haven't done. This is the competency. I want you to spend today and tomorrow in our classes together, remotely or in class together, and I will be on campus shortly. You want to use this to show me that you've got it work, all right? I would like to see you having completed some of the activities, not just tried them, but I'd like you to show me some green marks in your report card. Any questions? Okay, so what does that look like? So first off, let's do the Java run. So in the WebGoat, I can take what I found here and I can copy that. That is again right out of the WebGoat. I've put that information in the Learn shell. I've also copy and pasted the Java statement in the Teams chat as well. Okay. Now once you have that done, you want to then open up Windows Explorer and go to the appropriate directory. And I know I've shown you this in the past, but the easiest way to do that is just typing CMD inside of Windows whenever you're in the correct directory. Like I'm in the right directory now, type in CMD, it will open up a DOS window in the appropriate directory. once I've had that, and I've copied my code, all right? I copy my code, I go over and I can paste it right there. And it should work, all right? We see the WebGoat ASCII text, ASCII art text, I should see it. And after a little bit of time,
So we install this in our host machine, or we will install another Windows
no,
10
no,
virtual machine.
host machine. And you don't install it, you just run it. Java files like this, jar files, don't need to be installed. They are simply run, okay? And this is what you want to see. Started WebGoat, and for me it was 1.065 seconds. Now that was a little longer. But yeah, Mark, no, I'm doing this in my host machine, and I'm just doing it in the command prompt. And this is what you want to see. Start WebGoat in X number of seconds. That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Now I can go to my browser and I can go to localhost port 8080. And if I just type that, it doesn't work. What I need to do is go to WebGoat like that. And when I go to that, you will then see eventually oh, okay, you can't have anything selected. Let me show you what happened there. Let me show you that again, okay? What happened was, as I had something selected, if you highlight something in the DOS window, it suspends the Java. So if I close this and go to that site again, okay, well it worked this time, but the first time, if you click on something, if you have anything highlighted, it suspends the execution. This happens to me a lot, okay? Now, I've used this before, so I've got 2 accounts, but what you need to do is you need to register a new user. You can use your name and any password you want. Agree with the terms. You can sign up. Oh, it doesn't like that, so let's use Stephen J, which is probably why I did that before. Sign up.
I think
You
terms
have
of
to
use.
you have to check out the terms of use.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, that makes sense. Now it's working. There's also a link right here that will launch WebWolf for you and will log you in. And that's what you do. You have the 2 running concurrently so that you can have them both available to you. You can search for lessons, that's a new feature. You can choose a language, which is also a new feature, but this is what we're looking for. It's the report card. This tells you everything that you've done and what you've solved, what you've looked at. You can see what you've looked at by going through here, and you can go through any of these. I recommend access control. I recommend injection and authentication failure. Those are the 3 that I recommend, but I want you to play on this for 3 or 4 hours on your own. Okay? Any questions? All right. As I said, this is being recorded, and it's really not that tricky to get going. If this doesn't work for you, all right, and it throws errors for whatever reason, all right, that's fine. I hit Control C a couple of times so that it ends, and I've stopped the website, the jar file, from running. If that doesn't work for you, the next option is to take a look at some of the Docker suggestions that we have available as well. Again, when you go back, the first suggestion is to run Docker. Okay? I suggest you give it a name so that you can restart it more easily in the future. You don't have to give it a name. If you don't give your Docker instance a name, it will not work in the future. As you can see here, all of mine have assigned names rather than just some default name that Docker assigns when you do that. I prefer you do that. If you don't know what I'm talking about and the Java works, don't worry about it. This is an alternate that I want you to consider should Java not work. All right. With Docker, you don't actually have to ahead of time download anything. With Docker, all you really need to do is say, hey, Docker, go out, download what you need, and get this container up and running. And it is very robust, and rarely does it have a problem. The only problem you might have is, again, if you have some port conflicts. Okay? So I'm going to highlight the Docker command. I'm going to give my Docker name, the name WebGoat, and I'm going to use the parameters that it recommends. I usually run Docker through PowerShell. I find that it works better. And when I hit enter, it will start the process. I've already downloaded the necessary container things, and it will create an instance. Sorry, wrong one. It will create an instance, it'll name it, and then it'll start it up for me. And then at this point, it's the exact same as everything else. Localhost 8080 WebGoat. All right. Because this is different, my account that I just created is not available to me. So again, it's a completely different instance. Stephen J. I probably use password twice. I agree with the terms. Sign up, and it logs me in and gives me access. It didn't like that, so we don't use 0000. There's clearly a bug. We found a bug. So we're going to have to go localhost with the Docker container, and then it works. So there's clearly a bug in their Docker script somewhere. Let's take a look at it. 127, yeah, 127. So it's not the Docker script that's the problem. So there's something wrong inside what we're using. So if you use the Docker container, change 0000, which is what happens when you click on this. It wants to launch 0000. Change that address to localhost. Like that, and it will start up WebWolf. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, that's it for me for now. As I said, I will be hitting into work shortly. Just, you know the problems I'm having with my back, and I'm having one of those days. So, when possible, I will head into work. If you do have any questions, reach out to me. Over the years, the setup and running of this tool has gotten easier and easier and easier. So I'm finding that I'm helping students less and less. So if it's not working, try a different port. If it's still not working, take a look at using Docker and running the Docker setup. It should work fine. Once you have your Docker done, you can click on stop to stop the container. Once it's stopped, you can start it up at any other time by Docker. Oh, what is the command? Well, you can do it through your front end tool, but it's just Docker start. That's what it is. Start, and then whatever you named your container. And it should start it up again. You should see it running inside of your Docker desktop. And again, you can also start it here as well. Just click on the start button, and that will make it available here. Okay. You're of course going to have to start the login process again because we stopped and started the service. And the same with the WebWolf. You're going to have to start it, specify the correct address, and it should start again. Are there any questions? Okay. I've been recording this for those of you who came on later. I will share that. That recording is in Teams, but I also recorded my desktop. I'm going to do a new YouTube video, and I'm going to post that new video in Learn once it's processed and available. And I will message you in Teams telling you that there's a new video in Learn as well. If I don't hear from you or I don't see you later, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. That's it for me. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Stephen. Have
Bye-bye.
a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.